Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for February 1st through 7th. This week I read 2 books, I watched 3 movies, I watched 1 show, and I listened to 3 books. First this week I finished A Lush and Seething Hell. This is a book that binds up 2 different novellas by the same author, and they're both cosmic horror. The first novella takes place in Spain in the late 1980s, and it's this woman who is working at a university and she meets this older guy, and they kind of realize they're from the same place back in South America, in a country that doesn't actually exist in our timeline. This one is the shorter of the 2 novellas, so I don't want to give too much away about what goes on with that, but yeah, it definitely gets adventurous and creepy. The second novella talks about 2 different timelines, about 2 different guys who basically have kind of the same job. They both work for the Library of Congress, specifically to do with the music department, and the character we meet first lives in the present, and he's just had some terrible things happen to him personally, and he's just getting back into work eventually. We do see the terrible things happen in the first couple of chapters, but once he goes back to work, he's put on this assignment where he has to travel and go to this house and find if there's anything that the Library of Congress can actually take from this establishment. When he's there, he finds this field journal and all of these different records recorded in the 1930s from this guy who is going around to rural parts of America and trying to get secular songs. And obviously, while reading this field journal and listening to these recordings, some creepy things start happening. The foreword to this book was done by Chuck Wendig, who I haven't read before, but I recognize the name, and he very highly praised this, so I was really excited to get into it. And when I got into it, I was like, okay, this is actually kind of fine. There's a little bit of dude writing where it's just like, why did you mention genitals? Nobody needed to do that. But other than that, things were unsettling, and they definitely made you think about how the world is a very, very big place, and we are very, very small, and things can go terribly, terribly awry, and we have no way of stopping them. The other book I read with my eyeballs this week is Sorrowland. I didn't know anything about this book going into it, besides it's on a couple of different page-bound quests. But I didn't know anything about the synopsis. I didn't know that it was going to start as a wild ride and continue to be a wild ride all the way through. And I don't want to give too much away because this is crafted so well that you just want to keep reading and reading and reading and reading. I think I only read this over about 3 days. But at the very beginning of this, you realize that our main character is an albino black girl who's only about 15 years old. She might have actually been a smidge younger than that, and she is currently giving birth in the woods, and somebody is trying to find her. Now you would think things would calm down from there, but they really, really do not. And then years later, once you think that she might be able to settle down, something else becomes very, very apparent. At the risk of giving a little bit too much away, this book falls under the category of spoiler. It was absolutely brilliant. As for the movies I watched this week, the first one is from 2012, and that's Flight, starring Denzel Washington. We originally put this on because we thought it was about a different flight disaster type of thing that actually happened, and although this one is based on one that happened, what actually happened was very different than what happened in this movie. Our main character in this one, again played by Denzel Washington, is a pilot, and he also has a very big drinking problem. So he's already had some beverages when he goes to work one morning, and then on top of that, he's drinking while he's waiting for the plane to take off. He gets them up there, there's a little bit of turbulence, but other than that it's fine, and then all of a sudden something goes wrong with the plane and he has to try to land it. And he does, but there is a plane crash, people do die, and now they have to figure out who's at fault. And although technically this wasn't his fault, and if anyone else were flying the plane, probably everybody would have died, he also was doing something incredibly negligent. It was definitely a fascinating story with some great characters. The second thing I watched with my aunt and uncle, because apparently we weren't traumatized enough by this on the first night, was Kidnapped Elizabeth Smart. This is a true crime documentary that recently released on Netflix, and it is about the true life kidnapping of Elizabeth Smart. This is a very famous case. This happened around the time I would have been in my mid-teens. This case is of note because Elizabeth was actually taken from her own bedroom by a complete stranger, or at least somebody that she didn't know very well. Because of the rarity of this type of kidnapping, many people looked at the family really, really hard, and the family kept pushing to find her, and eventually they did. and it was in part because of something incredibly smart that Elizabeth herself did. I do watch a fair amount of true crime on YouTube, so I did know about this case going into it, but there's something completely different about watching the people that were actually part of this situation actually telling the story. So Elizabeth herself is in it, most of her family is in it, some of the cops that were on the case are in it, some of the reporters who were reporting on it at the time are in it. And I feel like this was very well done. The last movie that I watched is a repeat because I watched this a few weeks ago and we wanted to watch it again, and that's Wake Up Dead Man, which is the third in the Knives Out trilogy. I'm not going to repeat too much of what I said before, besides I really like these movies. I'm excited to eventually get a fourth one in like 4 years after this director goes off and does a couple of other projects and then comes back to something like this. But I will say, how dare you base a big amount of this plot on a book that is really hard to find. You can buy it digitally, but I wanted to get like an actual copy, and that's just kind of impossible unless you want to pay a lot of money, because people know that the copies are rare. So I will let you know that if you want to read The Hollow Man, which is the book that's highly referenced in this, it was also published under the name The Three Coffins. So if you can get a copy of that instead of a copy of The Hollow Man, you're reading the same book. I actually found an audiobook version of this on YouTube, so I think that's how I'm going to consume this book, because I do want to read it just based on the fact that it was so highly used in this movie. As for the show I watched this week, I watched every single episode of it yesterday. I meant to just sit down and watch maybe the first couple of episodes, just because obviously I've seen it before, and I think you're going to be able to figure out exactly what I watched based on this sticker that I bought from a friend's shop. Yeah, even though I just talked to you about it last week, I did a full rewatch of Heated Rivalry. I'm just so proud of the popularity of a story like this from my country and the very good things it's done. From the author of the books being able to get treatment because of the influx of money from this project, to the mayor of New York just telling people to stay home during the snowstorm and get copies of Heated Rivalry through the library, to these actors being Olympic torchbearers, to at least one former professional hockey player coming out, to all of the shenanigans with Mark Carney deciding that Hudson is now his best friend. All of it is absolutely delightful, and I'm sure I'm just scratching the surface of all of the really fantastic things that have happened because of this show, and I am so excited for the next season, but I feel like I could just rewatch the show over and over and over again until we get the next one. By the way, if you're interested in this sticker, or she's got a couple of other really good stickers, I will link my friend's shop down below. I haven't actually seen her since high school, but I think it's really cool that she is living off her own art and sending out her stickers that she makes herself in her own apartment in Montreal. On to the audiobooks I listened to this week, the first one being Wuthering Heights. And I feel like this book is a prank that people play on readers, because what the crap did I just read? This is one of those books where I've heard of it before, but I didn't really know too much about the plot, and I knew that it was about a brooding guy named Heathcliff and this woman named Catherine, and they're in love. And that's literally everything anyone's ever told me about this book before. But then you actually read the book and you're like, these are just a bunch of spiteful people from the 1800s that really needed therapy, and also what the hell even? What this book is actually about, so I can save you from actually going to read it yourself if you haven't been sucked into it yet, is this book is narrated by this guy named Lockwood. Now he has recently decided to rent a property that happens to be owned by Heathcliff. And we'll learn more about Heathcliff because this guy actually is the tenant of him, so he has to pay him rent and stuff like that, so it's his landlord, but he ends up going to the other property that Heathcliff owns and lives in, and he has a kind of a haunted experience while he's there. And after that, he basically wants to learn everything about the weird, messy family dynamics of these households, and he does find somebody to tell him that. Here's the situation boiled down. There is a family, there is a daughter and a son, and one day the father comes home with this boy who looks a little bit different than them and has decided that he is going to raise this kid. He gets the name of Heathcliff. Is it a first name? Is it a last name? Nobody freaking knows. The son really bullies Heathcliff, the daughter kind of likes him but also is kind of a bully, and at some point when they're a little bit older you come to realize that Heathcliff definitely has a crush on Catherine, but Catherine is trying to marry this guy from a different property because wealth matters in this society, and she says some things that are not too nice about him and when he can hear them, so he ends up disappearing for 3 years, comes back with a bunch of wealth, and basically decides that he's going to destroy this family. And he does. But is he happy about it at the end? No, he's not. There's even points where he tells people specifically how he's going to ruin their lives, and then people don't talk to each other to make sure that doesn't happen, and then it happens. Honestly, I'm still trying to figure out why this is a book that is widely read, why there would be a new adaptation of it, and why this would be considered a romance. Because when this book was written, the word romance basically just meant novel, not love story. So yeah, wasn't a fan. The next audiobook I listened to was much better, and that was Time Loops and Meet Cutes. This takes place in Toronto, and it's mostly following this one character named Noelle. She has a typical day at work where she's doing too much of the work. The person who's supposed to be the partner on this work isn't pulling his weight, and she decides to go to this night market, which is not something she usually does, and while she's there she ends up having these really delicious dumplings. The next morning is supposed to be Saturday, but her work alarm goes off, and Wordle is the same as it was the day before, and she realizes it is in fact Friday, so maybe she just dreamed Friday yesterday, and now she has to go to work and do the same things over and over and over again until it happens again and again and again, and she realizes she's in a time loop. So she ends up starting to just call into work sick, which is something she's never done. She's done it maybe once in the last 10 years, and trying to figure out how she got in this time loop and why she's in it and how to get out of it. Curious thing is, every time she goes back to the night market, the one thing that is different is that dumpling stand where she had that amazing food is no longer there. And the woman did tell her that these dumplings would give her what she needed. So now she figures she has to figure out what it is that she needs so she can get out of this time loop. After a few repeats of June 20th, she realizes there's another woman who also had dumplings and is also stuck in a time loop. So they basically memorize each other's phone numbers so they can talk to each other and they can try to tackle this issue together. This, of course, is also a romance because the thing that this main character needs is to move on and to get a new partner, because she had a horrible experience with a partner like 5 years ago, and there's this cute guy she keeps running into on different versions of June 20th, and she would really like to date him, but also is that ethical in this June 20th repeat situation? This one was very cute, it made me hungry, there were some steamy sections, I enjoyed it. And finally, another book that has to do with food and love, we have Fake Dates and Mooncakes. Our main character in this one works for his aunt's takeout place, and he actually usually works in the kitchen, but one day one of their delivery drivers is out sick and the other one gets a flat, so he ends up taking a bunch of deliveries on his bike, and he goes to deliver the very last one to this penthouse apartment, and the teenager there is an absolute jerk to him. The next day, the cute guy that was in the apartment with the absolute jerk comes to apologize, and he's already attracted to him. He's already actually seen him in his underwear because he was in his underwear in that apartment. But it also turns out that guy is completely loaded. They're from very different backgrounds, but they do have some things in common. It turns out the business is struggling a little bit, so Theo, the guy that comes to visit him, kind of helps him out in a way he didn't expect, and in return he asks him if he wants to go on a fake date with him because he has this event he needs to go to and he needs a date, so his family won't try to set him up with people. But of course, with most literary fake dating, it doesn't stay fake for very long. There are definitely feelings, there's definitely very messy things that happen throughout this book. There's also wonderful family moments, and this was just absolutely delightful. This had a really rich sense of remembering family that is past and different traditions that are passed down and the lengths that people will go to help other people, and it was just delightful. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!